and welcome to Okwe Sees the World, and once again I am Okwe. So last week I came to you all with national elections and talking about the US elections, and the only thing that might be crazier and more contentious than talking about elections is climate change, right? Like climate change always has people feeling a whole lot of type of ways, sometimes for totally legitimate reasons. Like, first of all, a lot of people question, right, like, is climate change actually a real thing? Living in Iowa and the fact that it was 70 degrees in the middle of November, trust and believe climate change is real. Second of all, there is a lot of money and power and prestige and lots of stuff tied into the conversations about climate change, right? You cannot look at climate change without considering the impact of the energy companies, the electronics companies, the car, the manufacturing, all these really powerful people who more often than not have their hands in the pockets of our elected officials. These people definitely move the world. And not only do they make a lot of money and have a lot of power, but they also employ a lot of people, which sometimes has people thinking like, ooh, money now or the longevity of our entire world later. All things that we have to think about. And then also there's another big issue is that there's a lot of conflict between how developing countries and developed countries deal with climate change. No matter where you are in the world, I think we can all agree that for the most part, developed countries, right? So like your European countries, your North American countries are the ones who significantly contributed to climate change being what it is today. However, your developing countries and your island nations oftentimes feel the negative effects of climate change way more than their richer counterparts, which leaves people to ask, well, someone's got to pay for me if I need to leave my island nation, to which many developed countries are like, yeah, that's not going to be us. So this year, as for many years over the past, 20-something odd years, the nations of the world have gotten together to talk about issues of climate change. And they've gotten together under the auspices of this thingy-majiggy called COP, which is short for the Conference of Parties. Is that true? Merci. Which is short for the Conference of Parties. And it started in 1995, and every year, basically, countries get together and they chop it up, and they try to come to agreements about what it is that the world's nations are going to do about climate change. For the last 21 years, it's just been a lot of talk. But last year in Paris, there was a big shebang called the Paris Agreement, which is the first time that there was actually anything legally binding that would hold all countries of the world responsible for keeping the world's temperatures under 2 degrees Celsius. Now, this seems like a little big deal. I mean, a little bit. It seems like a non-consequential thing. But 2 degrees is actually pretty significant, because for every 1 degree or half a degree Celsius that the world's temperature goes up, it should just be going crazy, right? Like, you can't grow crops, animal species go missing, the world's sea levels start rising, and Leonardo DiCaprio ages, which is a terrible. So there are a lot of things in the world that I think we can passionately disagree on, right? Like, should you wear white after Labor Day? Who's the sexiest man alive? What political party should I support? But when it comes to climate change, right, I just don't know where the conflict is, right? Climate change is real. The world is hot, and while it is scientifically true that the world goes through things every couple 100,000 of years, I think what we've been experiencing as a universe over the last 60+ years, right, it's been happening because of the 7+ billion human beings that exist, right? The cars that we drive, the air and the appliances that we use, the flights that we take, all of this stuff has a direct impact on the way that the world heats and cools itself. And it's not easy, right? Climate change was exacerbated by industrialization. Industrialization, we can all agree, it's a good thing, right? But the way we went about doing it had really adverse effects on the world as we know it today. And we can't ignore the fact that human beings have contributed to that. And so it's important for you all to care, right, that all this human activity, right, agriculture, industrialization, right, movement and fossil fuels and all of that, but basically what it does is that it releases all these terrible greenhouse gases into the air, CO2, methane, a bunch of stuff. And what that does, what these CO2, what these gases do, is that they basically they make the world hotter, right? And a hotter world means that the polar ice caps are going to begin to melt, And when the polar ice caps begin to melt, it's harder for the world to like cool itself. And in addition to it being harder for the world to cool itself, the sea levels rise, right? Our seas are now 20 centimeters higher than they were 100 years ago. And so rising sea levels mean a hotter climate, which means our weathers get crazier, which basically means that hurricanes are more significant, that summers are hotter, that winters more extreme. Island nations and developing countries are even at greater risk because they depend a lot more on their natural resources, and generally speaking, they are less resourced, like, you know, just in terms of like how their institutions work. When the hurricane happened in New York, right, like you had FEMA, you had the government, you had institutions that could help support people, people had insurance, so it wasn't that bad, you know, in the grand scheme of life. In the developing world, that's not necessarily always the case, right? And so all of these issues exacerbate itself, right? Island nations are drowning. Some of them are disappearing. People can't grow food and access clean water. Ice caps are melting, and the oil and fossil fuels, you know, are they're just fucking shit up, right? Like, we really only have like one Earth. All the stuff that we're trying to do like in space, that's totally great. But in the meantime, in between time, I think it's super, super, super important that we love the place that we're at right now. And I think basically the whole universe, including the people who went to COP22 this year and signed the Paris Agreement last year, are basically giving Mother Nature, like the Earth, like 30 years to like spit us out. She's probably just gonna be like, I'm over y'all. I've been trying to play nice for hundreds of thousands and millions of years, and y'all keep playing with me. So she's gonna be over it. So we're gonna see what she does. So every year when folks get together at these conference of parties, aka COP, they basically have 3 goals. Number 1 is to gather and share information on greenhouse gases and environmental change. Number 2, they want to implement national strategies to actually fix and hopefully maybe perhaps reverse the effects of climate change. And number 3, and cooperate and adapt to climate change effects, right? So that means when nations in the Pacific are drowning and they're like, we physically have nowhere to put our people, they're like, all right, well maybe you want to like move yourselves to like, I don't know, some little corner of Australia and call yourselves Fiji, except now you're in Australia. Sort of just working through all the complexities of that. So every year when they get together, those are their 3 goals. Hi y'all, and welcome back. This is Okwe, Sees the World. First of all, I really hope that you enjoyed some of the stuff and conversation that we had in the first part of this video about climate change. I think that climate change is a great place for me to introduce a new topic or a new series, let's call it, that I want to do called Let Her Tell It. In the series, I'm going to invite women who are already working and already making waves in the industries or in the universes about the topics that I'm going to be covering. So for example, great conversation with my friend Tea Chakamis. And Tea was lucky enough to attend COP23 in Marrakesh, Morocco. So we chopped it up a little bit, and I want to share with you all her thoughts and her experiences during COP23 this year. So my hope in during this new series called Let Her Tell It will be that 1, you'll be able to meet some of the amazing women that I get to call friends and get to spend time with, who are making fabulous waves in their own industries and their own universes, and that you'll be able to get a first-hand perspective about these topics that I'm interested at from people who are already in the midst of doing the work, engaging, being activists, and all this other great stuff. So I'm really looking forward to launching that, and you guys should be looking for videos over the next coming days and weeks. So as always, please, please, please let me know what you think about the videos that I'm posting. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm definitely open to criticism, and I'm also open to video ideas. All right, in the meantime, in between time, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next week on Akwe Sees the World. Have a great week.